A car engine is just a metal box that explodes on purpose. Which somehow became one of the most reliable machines humans have ever built. So, how does this exploding box actually work? Well, it's pretty simple. Nah, it's not. That was a lie. This is mechanical nonsense. Luckily, we don't have to understand all of this. Meet the cylinder. Inside the cylinder lives this guy. This is the piston. And his entire job is up, down, and yeah, that's it. He doesn't do anything besides that. He's basically an extremely angry elevator. No spinning, no sideways, no backflips, just up and down. Nice. But why is he moving? Why is this guy voluntarily doing squats a few thousand times every minute? He is simply following the 4-stroke cycle, which sounds incredibly professional, but it's really just the same 4 steps over and over and over again. And step 1 has a very scientific name, the suck. Or if you're boring, it's called the intake. See, explosions need 3 things: fuel, oxygen, and someone making incredibly questionable life choices. Right now, we have exactly none of those. So the engine does the most logical thing imaginable and takes a deep breath. But obviously, an engine doesn't have lungs. Instead, it has something much less exciting: a tiny door. This is the intake valve, and its entire job is to open and close. When the piston moves down, it creates empty space inside the cylinder. And nature really hates empty space. So the valve opens and air comes rushing in. But air alone doesn't make the car move. Because, congratulations, you just filled your engine with oxygen. Which is great, if your goal is to have an expensive air pump. We also need fuel. Tiny amounts of gasoline are sprayed in by the fuel injector. And now we have what engineers call the explosion smoothie. A very specific mixture of air and fuel. Too much fuel? Bad. Too little fuel? Also bad. The engine needs the perfect mixture. Not too much, not too little, just enough to make a controlled explosion. And now we have everything we need. Fuel, oxygen and bad decisions. So can we light it on fire now? No, because that would be a random explosion and that would be pretty useless. The engine wants a very specific explosion at exactly the right moment. And to make that happen, the valve closes. And the piston does something unexpected. It moves up and squishes the air-fuel cocktail, which brings us to step 2, the squish. So, what does squishing a bunch of air and gasoline actually do? Imagine the Tokyo subway during rush hour. They literally have people whose job is pushing everyone inside. Nobody has any personal space. That's basically what the piston is doing. It keeps pushing until the air and fuel are under an insane amount of pressure. And the more they are squeezed together, the easier it is for the explosion to spread. Some physics nerd could explain why. We are just gonna blame thermodynamics and move on. What actually matters is the engine now has one very angry and very compressed explosion smoothie, which is perfect. Because we're about to bully this guy right back where he came from.
You picked the wrong house, fool!
There's just one tiny problem. We still don't have an explosion. Nobody has pressed the big red button yet. And that's where this tiny idiot joins the chat. The spark plug has one job: committing arson. With a tiny electric spark, several thousand times a minute. Which brings us to step 3. The spark plug fires, ignites the air-fuel mixture, and because we spent the last step bullying everything into one tiny space, this entire stuff ignites almost instantly and gets very hot. Like 2500 degrees Celsius hot. Or the perfect temperature for the shower of your girlfriend. And hot gas takes up more space. And this gas really wants more space. Unfortunately, the cylinder walls don't care. And only the piston is allowed to move. So the explosion punches the piston back down. And chemical energy becomes mechanical power. Congratulations! We weaponized this metal box. Cool. Mission accomplished. Except cars don't drive up and down. So how do we turn this into this? We need something that turns up and down nonsense into spinny nonsense. Meet the crankshaft. This weird looking metal noodle is the reason your car actually moves. The piston is connected to this fidget spinner with a connecting rod. It's kind of Google Translate and converts the up and down movement into rotation. And that travels through the drivetrain all the way to the wheels. There is some stuff in between, but we don't care about that. But wait, we just burned fuel inside this thing. Where does the leftover garbage go? This brings us to step 4, the or called exhaust. So the engine does the next most logical thing imaginable. It moves the piston back up and opens a second tiny door, the exhaust valve,
1, 2, 3.
and gets rid of the crime scene. The piston yeets all the burnt gases out of the cylinder. And now the cylinder is empty again, ready for a second round. And that's the whole 4-stroke cycle, which means we are done, right?
Oh shit, here we go again.
And the engine does it again, and again, and again, and again. One cylinder doing this is already ridiculous. So what would any normal thinking person do? Add more of them, because more cylinders equal more fun. But there's actually a reason for this. Imagine trying to push a car with one person. It works. But this guy is doing overtime. Now imagine 8 of them. Everyone shares the workload, but in a specific order. And the movement becomes much smoother. That's what more cylinders do. But how fast does that happen? These guys ain't taking a break. It's basically unpaid labor. They repeat this 4-stroke cycle thousands of times. Which brings us to RPM, or revolutions per minute. At 1000 RPM, this metal noodle is spinning 1000 times every minute. Pretty straightforward. But at the same time, every piston, every valve and every spark plug is doing its part. At 6000 RPM, this happens 100 times. Every second. Which raises a question. How is this thing not turning itself into some expensive metal components? The answer is freedom juice. Metal doesn't like rubbing against other metal. That gets quite hot and wears down. And will make then expensive noises which can't be hidden by turning up your music. The engine pumps oil everywhere. Basically, if two metal parts might touch, oil shows up. It creates a super thin film on which the metal parts can glide on. Which means less friction, less heat, less wear and significantly fewer expensive noises. Without oil, your engine would last a few educational minutes. Don't forget to change it. So yeah, turns out the exploding box isn't just exploding randomly. Every explosion happens at exactly the right time in exactly the right place over and over again, thousands of times every minute. It's just a very precise, organized and well lubricated exploding metal box. Pretty normal stuff.